do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Your next witness.
Mr. Depp calls Jack Whigham, who should be waiting in the electronic lobby.
I've got him. All right. Mr. Whigham, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you do me a favor and just count to 1 to 5 for me?
Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right. Thank you, sir. Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth under penalty of law?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Whigham. Would you please state your full name for the record?
Sure. It's Jack Whigham.
Where do you live, Mr. Whigham?
I live in Los Angeles.
Where, if at all, did you earn your undergraduate degree?
I earned a degree in finance from the University of Florida.
In what year, if any, did you graduate from the University of Florida?
1998.
Do you have any graduate degrees, Mr. Whigham?
I do. I have a law degree also from the University of Florida and graduated in 2002.
Mr. Whigham, what do you currently do for a living?
I'm currently a manager representative for artists.
Would you please describe, Mr. Whigham, for the jury what a manager representative does?
So we, represent writers, directors, actors, actresses, mostly in their pursuit of artistic endeavors. So I primarily focus on film and television, but, all artistic endeavors.
How does a manager representative get paid?
Typically via a commission.
What?
So industry standard is kind of 10% of whatever the deal is.
And Mr. Whigham, what did you do professionally after you earned your JD at the University of Florida?
I was an attorney at a firm called Weil, Gottsville and Manges for approximately 3 years. And then I segued from there to a talent agency called CAA, Creative Artists Agency.
In what year did you start work at CAA?
I started there in April of 2004.
And Mr. Whigham, in what capacity did you start working at CAA?
I started at the bottom, in the mailroom, shucking mail, and then became an assistant for one of the managing partners. And then in 2007, I believe I became an agent. And then right around 2014, I think, I began co-running the film and talent department there.
And when your job responsibilities shifted to becoming an agent at CAA, would you please describe briefly for the jury what that entailed?
Sure. We were, also looking out for artistic endeavors on behalf of the clients, so writers, directors, actors, actresses, but we were also negotiating deals and, really pursuing film, television, producing deals on behalf of the clients.
Mr. Whigham, did there come a time when you left CAA?
I did. I left in August of 2020.
What, if anything, did you do professionally after you left CAA in August of 2020?
So I co-founded a management production company called Range Media Partners in August of 2020 and have been working there ever since.
What type of company is Range Media Partners?
It's a management representation production company.
Do you know Johnny Depp?
I do.
Mr. Whigham, when did you first meet Mr. Depp?
I actually met him very briefly on the set of Black Mass, which was probably, 2014 or 15, and then I met him very briefly at one of his music shows, but more substantively, I sat with him, I believe in the fall of 2016.
Did there come a time, Mr. Whigham, when you became Mr. Depp's agent?
Yes.
When was that?
Right around October, I believe, or fall of 2016.
Was that when you were still with CAA?
Yes.
When you first started with Mr. Depp as his agent, who, if anyone, assisted you?
I had two partners that I worked with Johnny. One was Brian Lord, and the other was Christian Carino.
Since starting to work with Mr. Depp as his agent in October 2016, have you had opportunities to observe him interacting with yourself and others?
Yes.
How would you describe for the jury Mr. Depp's demeanor on those occasions?
Objection relevant.
All right, what's the relevance?
The relevance is how he conducts himself professionally, which relates to his reputation, which is at issue.
All right, I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
You may answer the question, Mr. Whigham.
Sure. Johnny was always very nice, sweet, in fact, artistic, polite, and, very thoughtful, kind of uniquely thoughtful about how are you doing? How's your family? He was just a thoughtful person. He always has been.
Did he seem genuine?
Objection leading.
Oh, I'll sustain the objection.
To what extent, if any, did he seem genuine?
I'm going to object. How would he know?
I'm
Speculation.
not sure what objection that is, or
Speculation.
a speculation.
Foundation.
I believe he can testify as to that.
I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Her Honor says you may answer that question.
Okay. I found Johnny to be authentic. It was a genuine kindness.
And Mr. Whigham, prior to you first becoming Mr. Depp's agent in 2016, October of 2016, who was his agent prior to that?
I believe it was Tracy Jacobs at a company called UTA.
And before you took over from Tracy Jacobs as Mr. Depp's agent, what, if any, research or due diligence did you do with respect to him?
Objection
A
relevance.
fair amount.
All right, what's the
Again, Your
relevance?
Honor, it goes to reputation, which is the core of the issue.
We're going to get into
I'll
hearsay.
sustain the objection. Next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Were you aware of Mr. Depp's professional reputation at the time you became his agent in October of 2016?
I would say objection leading, and I think it's going to call for hearsay.
I'll overrule at this point. Go ahead.
I believe I was.
What was your understanding, if any, of Mr. Depp's professional reputation at the time you began representing him as his agent in the fall of 2016?
Johnny's reputation, in my opinion, was he was very well regarded and respected by peers in the artistic community.
Your Honor,
artistic.
I'm going to object. First of all, he says in his opinion, which he's not an expert witness, and second, he's now going into hearsay.
No, I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Mr. Whigham, Her Honor, you may continue.
Well regarded, respected, extremely talented, artistic.
Are you familiar, Mr. Whigham, with the distinction between an independent film and a studio film?
I believe I am.
What, if any, difference is there between an independent film on one hand and a studio film on the other?
So in layman's terms, I'd say that, a studio film is a bigger budgeted film. It has a distributor, a studio in place. So when you think of Disney, Marvel, Universal, these are big companies. They're bigger budgeted and bigger fees. And then independents, like we call them indies, typically are smaller budgeted, more artistically minded, smaller fees, and often don't have distribution when they're made.
Starting in October 2016, what types of opportunities have you pursued on Mr. Depp's behalf?
A wide variety, primarily I would say focused on film, television, and producing.
What, if any, roles did Mr. Depp have in progress as of that time, fall of 2016, going into calendar year 2017?
All right, so we inherited some deals. It was there was two films, as I remember, that were going to go back to back. One was City of Lies, the Notorious B.I.G. film, and the other was Murder on the Orient Express. So those were filmed almost at the same time, and they had pre-existing deals that we serviced, and then he had Fantastic Beasts: Crimes of Grindelwald as well, and then we were in the process. We ended up finishing the 6th film negotiation on Pirates of the Caribbean.
Mr. Whigham, you mentioned City of Lies. When was that film actually shot?
To the best of my memory, it was shot right, at the very end, mostly the beginning of 2017.
What was Mr. Depp's compensation for City of Lies?
I believe it was $8 million.
And you mentioned Murder on the Orient Express. When was that shot?
So it was shot at almost the same time. I actually can't remember which one went first. They were both shot predominantly, call it January to April of 2017. I remember us having to work out dates, but it was the beginning of 2017.
What was Mr. Depp's compensation for Murder on the Orient Express?
If memory serves me, I think it was $10 million.
Was Murder a studio film or an independent, or what you call an indie film?
It was a studio film. It was Fox.
Mr. Whigham, you also mentioned Fantastic Beasts 2: Crimes of Grindelwald. When was that film shot?
I believe that film was shot in the fall of 2017.
What was Mr. Depp's compensation for Crimes of Grindelwald?
Again, that deal predated us. I think it was $13.5 million, if I remember correctly.
Was Crimes of Grindelwald a studio film or an indie film?
It was studio. It was Warner Brothers.
And backing up a bit, Mr. Whigham, what was the first business opportunity you were able to secure for Mr. Depp after he came to you and CAA in the fall of 2016?
So I believe it was 2017 was it was busy. We had a slot that summer, and he wanted to do a smaller film, and it was The Professor, I believe.
How much compensation, if any, did he receive for performing in that smaller film, The Professor?
That deal was $3.5 million.
Was The Professor an independent film or was it a studio film?
It was independent.
And Mr. Whigham, how, if at all, was CAA compensated for closing the deal on The Professor?
So it would have been the normal 10% of the deal. So the deal was $3.5 million. The commission would be $350,000 to the agency.
Mr. Whigham, was 2017 a typical year for Mr. Depp in terms of the workload for an actor of his caliber and track record?
Objection, leading.
Overruled, I'll allow it. Go ahead.
And yes.
What other roles, if any, were you able to secure for Mr. Depp during your tenure at CAA before you went to the new company?
A film called Waiting for the Barbarians, and a film called Minamata.
When was Waiting for the Barbarian shot?
So Waiting for the Barbarians was fall of 2018.
What, if any, plans did you and Mr. Depp have for 2018, calendar year 2018?
We had a very specific plan for that year because 2017 was busy, and he had done 3 studio films, and I remember him wanting to take time off to rest and be with his kids for first half of the year, and then he wanted to go on the music tour, which always just made him really happy. And so that was the summer of 2018. And then we had the slot for the fall of 2018. And that's where we spent a lot of time thinking about what that movie was going to be. And Waiting for the Barbarians was kind of a little gift because it was based on a J.M. Coetzee novel, and Johnny's, very well read and knew the literature, the underlying book, and Mark Rylance was in the film, and it was just like a dream actor that he always wanted to work with.
What was Mr. Depp paid for Waiting for the Barbarians?
$1 million.
And I apologize if you've already said this. So was Waiting for the Barbarians an independent film or a studio film?
It was an independent.
Mr. Whigham, you also mentioned the film Minamata. When was that film shot?
That was the very beginning of 2019. So I think January start.
Was Minamata an indie film or a studio film?
It was independent.
How much was Mr. Depp ultimately paid for Minamata?
So his fee became, it was $3 million.
What, if any, role did Mr. Depp play in Pirates of the Caribbean 5?
He played Captain Jack Sparrow.
Was he paid an actor's fee for that film?
Technically, it was before my tenure, but yes, I would assume he was.
Mr. Whigham, would you please explain for the jury what are residual or back-end rights?
I think the easiest way to explain a back end is it's an ownership stake on behalf of the artist in the success of the movie, and typically is only granted to stars of a certain stature.
And in addition to the fee, Mr. Depp, the upfront fee that Mr. Depp was paid for Fantastic Beasts 5, which I know preceded you, what if any understanding do you have of whether Mr. Depp had any back-end rights for Pirates 5?
Objection, Your Honor. Foundation. He said that deal was at the other agency, and he wasn't.
I'll allow it if he knows it. That's fine. Go ahead.
Her Honor says you may answer the question.
Yeah, so you initially said Fantastic Beasts. I think you meant Pirates 5.
I apologize.
Pirates.
I did mean for Pirates 5, what, if any, back end did Mr. Depp have for Pirates 5?
I don't know what it was. I know that he had one.
To what extent, if any, did Mr. Depp ever have a deal to perform in Pirates 6?
So when we started representing him, I remember Brian Lord and myself finishing a deal that had started at the previous agency.
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
Okay. Hold on a minute.
For the interruption, Mr. Whigham, Her Honor says you may answer the question, which I believe is, to what extent, if any, did Mr. Depp ever have a deal to perform in Pirates 6?
So we finished the deal, and then we closed the deal at $22.5 million for that film, is my memory.
Which studio was involved in the Pirates series, including Pirates 6?
So that was Disney.
Was Disney, the studio, involved in all of the Pirates movies?
Yes.
What role was Mr. Depp to play in Pirates 6?
Objection calls for speculation
I'll allow it.
and hearsay.
I'll allow it.
Captain Jack Sparrow.
Was the $22.5 million to be paid to Mr. Depp by Disney or by some other entity?
Disney.
And when was that $22.5 million to be paid to Mr. Depp?
It would be paid when he shoots it. We call it principal photography, so when the film shoots.
Who was the producer of the Pirates franchise?
Jerry Bruckheimer.
Does Mr. Bruckheimer work for Disney?
No.
In 2017, to what extent, if any, was Mr. Bruckheimer supportive of Mr. Depp remaining in the Pirates franchise?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay.
I'll sustain objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. Putting aside his role in the Pirates films, did Mr. Depp have any other affiliations with Disney in 2017?
Yes.
What were those affiliations?
He, if I remember, in the spring, he went down to Disneyland and put on the Captain Jack Sparrow outfit and wardrobe and went into the ride. He and Disney had worked out a fun little thing where he was going to take the place of the automated, Captain Jack Sparrow on the Pirates ride, and so he would kind of surprise people as they were going along there. And so I remember he did that. And then in May of 2017, he went to Disney Shanghai to help open the Pirates of the Caribbean ride there.
What, if anything, did those affiliations signify about the status of Mr. Depp's relationship with Disney as of that time?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. To what extent, if any, did Mr. Depp socialize with anyone at Disney in 2017, to the extent you know?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow it to the extent he knows.
Do you know whether Mr. Depp socialized with Disney during 2017, yes or no?
Objection, Your Honor. Foundation and hearsay.
I do.
If you could lay a foundation to how he knows.
How do you know that Mr. Depp socialized with Disney in calendar year 2017?
Because I was there.
Who, would you please describe for the jury what you mean when you said you were there when Mr. Depp socialized with Disney?
We had a dinner in spring of 2017 with myself, Jerry Bruckheimer, Johnny, and Sean Bailey, who was running the film, was president of Disney.
How did the dinner conclude?
Great. I mean, very, very nice. It was a great dinner.
As of early December 2018, so we're now in December of 2018, what, if anything, was your understanding of the status of whether Mr. Depp would actually appear in Pirate 6?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay.
All right, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Mr. Whigham, did there come a time when you saw an op-ed that purportedly written by Amber Heard that appeared in the Washington Post?
Yes.
Mr. Whigham, I would like to show you, please, what was entered previously into evidence as Plaintiff's Exhibit 1. Mr. Gibson, would you please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 1? And, Your Honor, may we please publish this to the jury as it's been previously. Oh, it is. Thank you. Mr. Whigham, have you ever seen this document before?
Yes.
What is it?
I believe it's the opinionated op-ed in the Washington Post that Ms. Heard wrote.
Mr. Whigham, when did you first see Ms. Heard's op-ed in the Washington Post?
It would have been right contemporaneous to when it came out.
And Tom, if you would please move ahead to, I believe, the second page in Plaintiff's Exhibit 1. and drawing your attention specifically to the third paragraph of the op-ed, Ms. Heard writes, quote, 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out, unquote. What, if any, understanding do you have of that reference?
That it was regarding Johnny and their relationship.
Directing your attention, Tom, if we could just move back up to the first page of Exhibit 1. Directing your attention to the title of the article, quote, Amber Heard, colon, I spoke up against sexual violence, unquote. What, if any, understanding do you have of that reference?
Objection, Your Honor, it's irrelevant what his understanding is.
Yeah, I'll allow it.
That was rather shocking, I remember, because it was the first time I'd heard an allegation of sexual abuse.
And against whom was the allegation of sexual abuse?
Objection, Your Honor. How would he know?
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Mr. Whigham, directing your attention to the fifth paragraph of Plaintiff's Exhibit 1, Ms. Heard writes, quote, I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse, unquote. To what does that refer?
Objection, Your Honor. How would he know what it refers?
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Mr. Gibson, if you would please take down Plaintiff's Exhibit 1. Mr. Whigham, how, if at all, was Ms. Heard's op-ed different from other articles about the couple's relationship?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for hearsay foundation.
All right.
Other articles?
Mr. Whigham, had you seen other articles in the course of your duties as Mr. Depp's agent about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp?
Objection, Your Honor, still.
Yes.
Calls for hearsay foundation.
I'll allow it.
Thank you. How, if at all, was the op-ed different from other articles you had read about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard relationship?
It was a first-person account coming from the victim. It's extremely impactful.
Impactful in a good or bad way?
With respect to Johnny, it was catastrophic because it was coming from a first-person account. It was not from a journalist. It was not from someone observing. It was from someone saying, this happened to me.
Mr. Whigham, between December 18, 2018, the date of the op-ed, and October 2020, did Mr. Depp perform in any studio films?
Sorry, could you just repeat the dates?
Between December 18, 2018, which is the date that Ms. Heard's op-ed appeared, and October 2020, to what extent, if any, did Mr. Depp perform in any studio films?
Zero. No studio films.
How, if at all, did Ms. Heard's op-ed impact Mr. Depp's ability to land roles in studio films between December 2018 and October 2020?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for hearsay foundation and expert.
I'll sustain that objection. Next. Are you near the end, Mr. Chu? I just want to make sure because it's
I am,
coming up on
Your
our morning break. Okay.
I
Go.
have probably 5 minutes.
Okay, that's good. Go ahead.
What effect, if any, did the op-ed have on the release of Minamata, the indie film you mentioned earlier?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for hearsay speculation.
He worked on
You
the
want to approach for a moment?
Sure. Yes, Your Honor. What happened, Mr. Whigham, after the op-ed, but before October 2020, with respect to Minamata?
So the op-ed came out in December, and it was right as we were going on Christmas break, and our Minamata was supposed to start in January, and I remember it was very, very difficult to keep Minamata together. The financing became shaky. The budget had to come down. Johnny's fee came down in order to save the movie.
Tom, if you would please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 584, and we're not asking to publish it because it does not come in. This is an email chain with the subject line, quote, Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow won't
I
return.
object to him reading
All right.
even from that to the jury.
That's fine, Your Honor. We
Okay,
can.
move on.
Mr. Whigham, do you recognize this email chain?
Yes, now that I'm looking at it.
What is the date of this email chain?
I think it's December 20th.
December 20th of what year, sir?
Sorry, December 20th of 2018.
Mr. Whigham, directing your attention to the middle email message on Plaintiff's Exhibit 584, did you receive this message from Christian Carino in or about December 20th, 2018 at 3:26 p.m.?
Your Honor, I'm going to object because it's a hearsay document. He's asking questions from the hearsay document.
I'll
It's
allow that.
double.
I'll allow that question. We'll see where we go.
Her Honor said you may answer that question.
Yes, I see, I see what he's asking me.
Would you please explain to the jury what the message was about?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. Hearsay. He's asking him to essentially say
If we
what.
want to approach for a moment.
Tom, if you could please take that down. Mr. Whigham, did there come a time after Ms. Heard's publication of the op-ed on December 18, 2018, but before October 2020, that you learned more about Disney's plans about whether it would cast Mr. Depp in Pirate 6?
Objection, hearsay.
All right.
I'm just asking whether he
Okay, I'll allow that.
Yes,
when did that happen?
in 2019.
What happened? Go ahead.
No, Your Honor. object.
Next question.
What happened in 2019 with respect to Disney, your learning about Disney's plans, whether to use Mr. Depp in Pirate 6?
Objection, hearsay.
What happened? So
Yes.
I'll allow what happened. Go ahead.
It became clear they were going in a different direction.
When did you learn that Disney was going in a different direction and no longer planned to use Mr. Depp in Pirate 6?
Early 2019.
Who is Margot Robbie?
She's a fantastic actress. She's a client of CAA.
What, if anything, did you learn about the role Margot Robbie would be playing in Pirate 6?
I think that calls for hearsay. Again, Your Honor, I'm going to object.
I'll overrule the objection.
I learned that they were developing a Pirates project for her to star in.
After you learned that Disney was going in a different direction in early 2019 and no longer planned to use Mr. Depp, did you To what extent did you reach out to Jerry Bruckheimer or Sean Bailey?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay.
It does not, Your Honor.
Overruled, I'll allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
A lot.
Did you reach out to Mr. Bruckheimer and Mr. Bailey jointly or separately?
Separately.
What, if anything, was the result of your outreach to Mr. Bruckheimer and Mr. Bailey?
Objection still calls for hearsay, Your Honor.
Calls for hearsay. Yes, Chief.
I'm just asking what the result was.
It's still based on his communications with them.
All right, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
After your outreach to Mr. Bailey or strike that, was your outreach to Mr. Bruckheimer and Mr. Bailey successful?
Objection leading.
I'll allow it.
No. I successfully made contact with them, but I was not successful in rescuing pirates for Johnny.
When was the last time you discussed Mr. Depp's role in Pirate 6 with Jerry Bruckheimer, Sean Bailey, or anyone else at Disney?
I'm going to object, Your Honor, on hearsay.
Overruled.
2019, I believe.
In addition to Pirate 6, did Mr. Depp lose other films between December 2018 and October 2020 because of Ms. Heard's op-ed?
Objection.
I'll sustain the objection.
In addition to Pirate 6, did Mr. Depp lose any other films between December 2018 and October 20?
Objection, Your Honor. First of all, I don't think he testified that he lost Pirate 6. Second of all, it's
She's now contradicting the witness's testimony,
no,
which is
no,
just trying to ask
inappropriate.
the question
Both of you.
the other way.
Both of you. Overruled. Let's go. Next. Go ahead and answer the question.
Yes. You know, after the op-ed, it was impossible to get him a studio film, which is what we normally would have been focused on in that time period.
Mr. Whigham, to what extent did COVID, or strike that, to what extent, if any, did COVID impact Mr. Depp's opportunities prior to October 2020?
I think it had an effect on Johnny, like other actors to some degree, but we were still doing business, especially on behalf of bigger stars that greenlit films, and so what was happening was we would close deals or put together a movie and then just set the start date for whenever people could get together and actually shoot the movie.
Mr. Whigham, in your many interactions with Mr. Depp, have you ever seen him angry?
Objection, Your Honor. It's leading.
I'll sustain as to leading.
In your many interactions, thank you, Your Honor. In your many interactions with Mr. Depp, to what extent, if any, have you ever seen him lose his temper?
I never have, actually.
To what extent, if any, has Mr. Depp ever raised his voice in your presence?
No, he never has.
Mr. Whigham, to what extent have you ever seen Mr. Depp engage in any violence?
Never.
Mr. Whigham, other than Ms. Heard, are you aware of any other woman who has ever accused Mr. Depp of physical abuse?
Objection, leading, foundation, and hearsay.
I'll sustain the objection to leading.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Whigham.
All right.
I will pass the witness.
All right, Mr. Whigham, we'll do cross-examination in about 15 minutes. I'm going to take a 15-minute morning recess. All right, Mr. Whigham, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. As soon as you ask him his first question, he should pop up there.
He'll come
All right,
up then?
Yeah,
Okay.
cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Whigham, you testified that you closed a deal for Mr. Depp for Pirate 6 with him acting as Jack Sparrow. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
Mr. Whigham, could you do me a favor and just count from 1 to 5 for me so I can get you on my big screens here?
Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I'm not getting on this. There he
There
is.
we go.
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I'm sorry.
But in fact, Mr. Whigham, it's not true that Mr. Depp ever had a contract with Disney for Pirates 6. Isn't that correct?
Can you explain that question or that position?
Have you ever seen a contract that provides for Mr. Depp to play Pirates 6?
To the best of my knowledge, my memory, myself and my partner closed an optional picture deal for the amount of money of what that picture would be for Johnny.
And you would make sure to have that in writing, wouldn't you?
You know, that would normally go through legal counsel in terms of the codification of it.
Do you have any explanation for why there exists nothing, no piece of paper, nothing suggesting that Mr. Depp ever had a deal with Disney for Pirates 6?
Objection, lack of foundation, compound.
Oh, I'll allow it.
So I often close, when I was an agent, we would work on many deals where I actually wouldn't see contracts. They were verbal in nature. And then, you know, especially on optional pictures, just so there was an understanding of what the money would be.
So do you have an explanation why there is not even a piece of paper, not an email, not a text, not a document, nothing that suggests that Mr. Depp is going to be in Pirates 6 as Jack Sparrow?
Objection, asked and answered.
I don't believe it was.
So overruled. I'll allow it.
I mean, if you're asking me my opinion, it wouldn't necessarily be alarming because that would be a conversation usually to understand. Disney's going to want to know: are we on the same? Page about what the money's going to be? And most of that conversation, if I remember correctly, was also with one of Johnny's lawyers at the time.
Okay, and so you had, so Johnny's lawyer was discussing this, but there's no document. Do you have an explanation for that?
You may know better than me if there is a document, but that was Jake Bloom, you know, at the time, I believe, if memory serves me correct.
All right. But would it be fair to say that you have never seen a document that provides that Mr. Depp was going to be in Pirates 6?
It would be fair to say that it was consistent with a lot of the conversations that I would have on behalf of big stars, where it was verbal and there was an understanding of what the deal was going to be.
Mr. Whigham, if you could please answer my question.
Objection, harassment. He did answer the question.
I'll allow you. Want to ask your question? Go ahead.
Thank you.
Sure.
Judy,
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Judy, can you read that back? Thank you.
All right, but would it be fair to say that you have never seen a document that provides that Mr. Depp was going to be in Pirates 6?
It would be fair to say that I have not seen a document on Pirates. Now, just so you know,
Mr. Whigham, I don't need you to give me extra. I just want you to answer mine. I just want to know, have you ever seen a document that says Mr. Depp is going to be in Pirates 6?
I only to fully answer the question though, I think there's some context.
That's an easy yes or no. Have you seen a document?
Technically, I perhaps have, because it connects to all the other Pirates films. It's just a modification of a new document. So I have not seen 22.5 million written on a page. You're correct about that.
Okay. Now, you, in fact, had discussions back in 2016 and 2017 with Mr. Bailey, Sean Bailey. You talked about him a little bit ago, right? Yep. And you also had discussions with Jerry Bruckheimer in 2016 and 2017, correct?
Yes.
About Mr. Depp potentially being in Pirates 6, correct? And then you had discussions in 2018 with Mr. Bailey, and he was quite non-committal about whether Mr. Depp would be in Pirates 6, correct?
Objection, hearsay?
That's fine.
All right.
Okay. Given that he was able to,
I'll sustain as to hearsay. It is hearsay.
Okay.
All right.
so you determined, Mr. Whigham, that by the fall of 2018, it was very likely that Mr. Depp was not going to be in Pirates 6. Is that correct?
It's a two-pronged answer from my perspective, because there was really two individuals involved in that decision. I would say Jerry Bruckheimer and Sean Bailey. Jerry Bruckheimer, in the fall of 2018, really wanted Johnny in that next film, and Sean was non-committal, as you said.
And Mr. Bruckheimer made it clear to you that Mr. Bailey was the one who gets to decide because he's Disney, right?
Ultimately, and he also wanted to be the tip of the spear to really try to convince Sean.
Okay. Now, do you recall?
Thank you.
Do you recall having your deposition taken on January 20, 2021? Okay.
Yes, ma'am, with you.
Okay. Can you pull that up, Michelle, please? Thank you. I'm going to ask you to turn to page 44. And Mr. Whigham, you were under oath at the time of this deposition, correct? Correct?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Line 10. This is page 44, line 10. The question, do you recall approximately when in 2018 you inferred from your discussion with Mr. Bailey that the likelihood of Mr. Depp being in Pirates 6 was not high or was going away? And your answer at that time was, if memory serves me, the latter part of 2018 maybe. Question, when you say latter, is that any time from August to December, or what are you thinking? Answer, I would say fall, maybe, October, November, December, in that area. Do you recall giving that testimony under oath at that time?
I do, now that I see it, yes.
Okay. And in fact, there were quite a few things going on earlier in 2018 that might have had a bit of an impact on Mr. Depp's reputation. Would you agree?
It might help if you
Refresh
I'm
your
not-
recollection? Sure. But before I go there, though, I think you said that the reason it was so catastrophic for Mr. Depp for the op-ed was because it was a first-person account of Johnny, right? Do you remember saying that?
Yes.
Okay. Wasn't it a first-person account when Ms. Heard filed for the TRO in 2016?
So that would have predated any relationship I had to Johnny, so I had no knowledge of that.
Okay, so you don't know whether it was catastrophic then?
If you're asking me my opinion on something I don't know, I can form an opinion right now. It's a court document and probably a little different than an op-ed in the Washington Post. But I would agree it's not now that I'm forming an opinion, that it's not a great headline for sure.
When you read the op-ed, did you read it online or did you read it in the actual Post paper?
I don't remember.
Well, let's pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 2. Does this refresh your recollection?
Very hard for me to see. Is that just the paper?
We're going to try to scroll in a little bit more.
Again, just if you can help me. Is that the paper? Is that
Yes.
the article?
Yes, that's the Washington Post.
So, what's the question? Sorry.
Does this help refresh your recollection of whether you saw it in print or whether you saw it online?
It does not, but I'll tell you that I did not typically pick up the Washington Post,
Okay, and so while we're sitting, if you can, just for a second, you're saying that then 2 years ago I became, oops, I better not do that. Let's clear that one. Then 2 years ago I became a public figure representing domestic abuse. That's this first person from Ms. Heard that's catastrophic for Mr. Depp. Is that your testimony?
My testimony is that it reads like a victim statement from someone involved and the recipient, and it became a bit of a death nail, catastrophic thing for Mr. Depp in the Hollywood community.
All right, well, let's pull up Defendant's Exhibit 99. Now, there was, in fact, an article published in the Sun newspaper by Dan Wooten, the editor-in-chief, on April 27, 2018. Do you recall that?
Now that I'm looking at it.
Does that refreshes your recollection? And in fact,
Yes.
This article calls Mr. Depp a wife beater, does it not?
Objection, hearsay.
I'll allow it for them.
You know what? I can't see the print even with these glasses, but
All right. Well,
I'll take your word for it.
Well, the title here is How Can J.K. Rowling Be Genuinely Happy Casting Wife-Beater Johnny Depp in the new Fantastic Beasts film?
Objection,
Do you see
hearsay,
that?
Your Honor.
I'll allow that.
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of this exhibit. I think it's articles. He's testifying to the impact of the op-ed. I think it's, in fairness, we should be able to put this in and be able to make the comparisons.
It's clearly hearsay, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the
It's
objection.
not offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted, Your
I'll
Honor.
sustain the objection.
Okay. Well, let's go to the third page. No, let's go to the fourth page. So it has A5, I think is what I'm trying to get to. So it says paragraph 7. So do you recall that it says in here,
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
Your Honor,
She's just trying to backdoor your ruling.
Mr. Whigham, the article also had pictures, did it not?
I don't recall.
Do you recall whether it had a picture of Ms. Heard?
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
I'll allow that.
I don't recall.
Can we go to the 8th page? I'm showing you the picture right now. Does that refresh your recollection?
Your Honor, hearsay, lack of foundation.
I'll allow it.
It doesn't speak to my impression of when I read it or how I read it, but I see the photo. Yes, ma'am.
All right, and in fact, it shows bruises on it, doesn't it? On Ms. Heard's face?
Objection, lack of foundation.
Overruled.
That would be what I see, yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Depp filed a lawsuit against the Sun newspaper and against Dan Wooten for this article, correct?
I believe so.
June 13, 2018. Let's pull up 1599, defendants 1599. Does this refresh your recollection?
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
Just for refreshing recollection, I'll allow.
Just so I understand the question, you're asking, does it refresh a memory that Johnny filed suit against the Sun?
Yes, and Dan Wooten. On June 13, 2018.
Sure.
Okay.
Now that I'm looking at it, yeah.
All right, and he did so in the UK, in the High Court of Justice, correct?
I believe so. You would know better than I.
Okay, and if we can just turn to page 9, and do you recall that Mr. Depp alleged that that article had caused him serious harm to his personal and professional reputation?
Objection, hearsay, calls for speculation.
I'll allow the question.
Thank you.
No, I don't recall.
I'm going to ask you to take a look at paragraph 11. And let me see if I
I
can
need
get
new glasses.
Okay.
Sorry. I can barely.
I'm gonna-
I wish, Your Honor, is there a way to even make that screen bigger on mine? I wish I had better glasses and more technologically savvy.
They can make it a little bigger, but I think that's about as far as it can go.
I'm going to try to highlight it here so that that might help you a little bit. Let me switch the color. So, do you recall that Mr. Depp alleged that the article in the Sun newspaper by Dan Wooten had caused serious harm to the claimant's personal and professional reputation?
If you're asking me, I don't recall it. I was not involved in that case at all. I'm able to read what's in front of me.
But you don't recall it, and you don't recall if that had any impact on Disney in 2018?
Objection, asked and answered.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
All right. Do you recall that Mr. Depp also alleged that he was caused significant distress and embarrassment by the publication of that article?
No, I don't recall that.
Okay.
I say that because I just was not involved in that case.
All right.
My memory of that was it was a tabloid, and the lawyers were handling.
All right. Michelle, you can take that down. Thank you. Now, there was a trial in the UK, was there not, on Mr. Depp's claims of libel against Dan Wooten and the Sun?
I believe so.
And it was in July of 2020, was it not?
I don't remember the date, actually.
All right. And it lasted 3 weeks? Do you recall that?
I don't, but I'll take your word for it.
Do you recall there being an enormous amount of publicity surrounding that trial?
Objection, calls for speculation, lack of foundation.
He said he did. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Whigham, you said you did recall that?
Asked and answered.
I'll allow it.
I remember there being press around it, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And in fact, do you recall that Mr. Depp gave testimony for 4 days?
Not specifically. I don't.
Do you recall that Ms. Heard gave testimony for 4 days?
I don't recall any specific memory of who testified, for how long, or any details within the case.
Do you recall there being many, many witnesses testifying on that case?
I think I'd revert to my answer just now.
Okay. And the press that surrounded that case, do you recall it being focusing on things like Mr. Depp's drug and alcohol use?
Same answer.
Do you recall there being the video, the kitchen video, being shown repeatedly?
Objection. Your Honor, may we approach?
Sure.
I think my last question was, do you recall there being a lot of publicity surrounding Mr. Depp's alcohol and drug use?
I think I answered that.
Oh, that's right. I was on the
don't
video,
recall.
the kitchen video. Do you recall there being the kitchen video being played pretty repeatedly in the press?
No, I don't.
Do you recall a lot of pictures of Ms. Heard reflecting bruises, cuts, injuries?
I think, just to be clear, I don't recall anything that was going on within the case. I was always consumed with next film and TV opportunities, and that was being handled by the lawyers. That's my memory.
Do you recall, I just have a couple more to ask you on this, do you recall there being allegations of at least 14 incidents of domestic violence against Ms. Heard in that trial?
I do not, with specificity. Same answer.
Now, could we bring up exhibit number 1 again, plaintiffs? Now, Mr. Whigham, do you know who wrote Amber Heard, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath, this has to change?
You're talking about the title?
Yes.
I wouldn't say that I would have assumed it was Miss Heard.
You assumed, but you don't know, do you?
I do not.
Okay. And were you aware that there were also 3 pleaded incidents of sexual violence in the UK trial against Ms. Heard by Mr. Depp?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, your testimony is, you can take that down now, thank you. Your testimony is that since some point in 2020, Mr. Depp has not had any more movie opportunities, is that correct?
Sorry, repeat the date.
When is the last time Mr. Depp had a movie opportunity?
The last film that he shot was Minamata, to the best of my memory.
All right. And in fact, do you know whether the article that was in the UK, the ensuing lawsuit that was brought by Mr. Depp, and the ensuing trial and all the publicity, do you know whether that had any impact on Mr. Depp's career?
Objection compound.
All right, I'll sustain the objection.
Do you know whether the collection of all of those items I just listed had an impact on Mr. Depp's career?
Remind me of the dates that you're asking about.
So the answer, I take it, is no, you don't know, correct?
I'm just trying to make sure I give you a correct answer so I understand the question. You referenced after 2020.
Okay,
Is that what you're saying?
the article was April of 2018. The lawsuit was June of 2018. The trial was July of 2020. What opportunities has Mr. Depp had since July 2020?
Since July 2020, he has not done a film.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, redirect.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Whigham. Do you recall Ms. Bredehoft asked you questions about whether you ever actually saw a document containing the $22.5 million deal for Mr. Depp for Pirate 6? Do you recall that?
I do.
And do you recall when you were trying to answer her question, you said you needed a little more context? Do you recall that?
Yes.
And would you please